This is another episode of Standup Comedy, your host and MC, celebrating 40-plus years on the fringe of show business. Stories, interviews, and comedy sets from the famous and not so famous. Here's your host and MC, Scott Edwards.
Hey, welcome back to the great podcast, Standup Comedy, your host and MC, and we're trying something a little different this season. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we're doing a comedy roundtable, and I have three terrific comics. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Cody, Cotulla, Steve Bruner, and Ray Engan.
Yay! I know all of them.
Yeah. And we all look the same.
Good to have you guys here. Let's introduce everybody, though. We'll start with Cody. Tell the audience who you are and how you got into stand-up comedy or what you did in stand-up comedy. Have some fun with it.
All right. That's a great question, Scott. How did I get into stand-up comedy? I'm like, what the hell? Well, I was going to be a doctor or a stand-up comic. I think the world is a better place because I'm not a doctor. I performed as Cody Blaine. That's my middle name, Cody Blaine Cotulla. Now I go by my first and last name primarily because on the internet, if you search for Cody Blaine, you primarily see mugshots and people who are in jail and things like that. It's a great name for a murderer. Is Cody Blaine. So
I knew I recognized you.
So I did comedy for about 10 years. Probably my favorite club, honestly. First club I ever saw comedy in was Laughs Unlimited. First place I ever worked.
How about that?
For my first weeks of work, what I think of as real comedy was at Laughs Unlimited. So like I said, I did comedy for about 10 years. Took a significant amount of time off. I won't tell you how old I am, but let's just say I'm more than half a century old now.
Nice.
I think I did my first week at Laughs when I was 21.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's been a while. Anyway, so what I really, so my focus these days is still going out, writing a lot, being funny, funny at my work, funny on the job, and also doing some professional public speaking. And my big focus is trying to figure out how the heck does comedy work, and how can you get people who aren't professional comics to use humor and comedy in their lives? And I tell you what, that's
So passing on some wisdom. Good for you,
Passing on
Cody.
some wisdom, yeah.
Also joining us, the very funny Steve Bruner. Steve, good to have
me,
you.
everybody. And also, I was wondering if the last show you did was at Laughs, Cody. I've been doing comedy. I think we all kind of started together, so back in the day, and been doing it since then. And my first week was also at Laughs Unlimited.
Whoa, that's
Big, long
two.
week.
I'm two
That's
for
right.
two.
Yeah. No pressure, Ray. And just been doing stand-up at clubs and colleges and cruises and corporate and in my living room during COVID.
Well, we should say
for
that Cody did go in and out of the business, but Steve, you've been an ongoing professional comic for 30 years.
30 years. That's
and
right.
and
That's
still
right.
doing it.
That's
and
right.
we just did some work together in recent years, and
That's
it's
right.
great.
It is work being with Scott. Let me just tell you, people, it is work.
All right, well, with that, we're going to Ray. Ladies and gentlemen, comic professional Ray Engan.
Hey there, I was waiting for the big applause and everything like that.
Yeah, sorry.
No, my very first foray into comedy was a bunch of guys sitting around a table like this having a few beers at UC Santa Barbara, and I saw a sign that said amateur comedy competition. And I was drinking, so I said, yeah, I could win that. And my friend signed me up. So I had to do it. And I actually did win the contest.
Yeah, baby.
It would have been better to come into second place because second place got Tom Petty tickets. I got to host an air guitar contest. So that's kind of
Interesting prize.
That's my comedy career. And I think my first week, I'll just say it was at Laughs Unlimited.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's a pattern.
Go with the flow. Well, it's great to have all of you guys here on the podcast and a comedy roundtable. It's kind of a new idea for me. It's been tried on TV a couple times. But what I thought we'd do is talk about what we've gotten out of this industry, which is so unique and so different. For example, is there something that you know now as a professional that you wish you knew when you were an open micer?
Well, stepping in, I would say that listening to people's suggestions would have helped me a lot more. I was so excited about doing comedy that when I finally got around to actually listening to advice, it cut down my learning curve, which is why I value, Cody doing his how can people get funny and I also would have probably networked a little bit more. I didn't understand. I mean, I don't think there was the word networking back then.
Yeah. Well, but in my comedy course, one of the things we talk about is that a lot of comics didn't realize it's a business and you're the product. So you have to sell that product. And that means sales, marketing, getting your word out there. Cody, was there anything you know now you wish you knew then?
Well, I mean, I guess to pick up on the whole networking thing and it's I think you have to know people. I mean, and I don't mean know people in like, this person and they're going to help you. They're going to give you this job. But you basically, you're up on stage alone, and you're up on stage alone, and you need support. And when you're first starting out, often you are performing to other comics, and that's all. And so you're listening to other comics, and if you're up on stage really, and you feel like you're completely alone, it's horrible. Right? But if you're up on stage, and I've talked to Ray about this, but if you're up on stage and you're doing a joke and you believe it's funny and this is funny and the audience is laughing and you've got that one friend in the back who gives you that, ha!
You can hear it.
and it's a laugh of support. And I think having that and really, I think cultivating and giving
pity.
Or pity.
I'll take it.
Giving that to the people, really understanding that this is you're up on stage by yourself, but you need to help other people and be willing to be helped by other people. I think that is a big
comedy is a community, and cultivating those relationships, I think, on or off stage gives you support because it's a really tough industry. Ray, have you picked up something with age that you wish you knew when you were just starting?
That nobody gets successful by themselves. And in the history of mankind, basically. But of course, when I did comedy, I didn't get represented by anybody. I didn't let anybody help me. It's like I did all the stuff by myself. And that's, and I think most comics think the business is fun, but that's not really it. The business is money. And you have to be able to show the club owner that you can bring people into the place that drink heavily.
Butts in the seats.
Yeah, butts in the seats. And it doesn't matter how funny you are. It's how many people you can bring in for the owner.
Yeah, and being funny helps.
That's right. Yeah. I did read something. I don't know if it was Sylvester Stallone that said a lot of people that enter into show business focus on the show. Very few focus on the business. And business is the way bigger word. And it doesn't mean that everybody's mercenary because, I told a million people if they'd listen that if I could find something that was half as fun and I could make half as much money, I'd probably do it. Sometimes you're driven into certain things. Comedy is definitely an art form that you kind of get driven into. Even if you're driven out of it, you still have that. There's something about it that is so drawing.
We've talked about that a lot in the interviews and the shows, and maybe even with you guys. I've interviewed all three of you, but there's something about getting a laugh from a room full of strangers that's addictive. It's something that once you get it, you want to get that feeling, right? It's like crack, I guess. Not that I've ever had crack, but you know what I mean.
Well, speaking from experience,
funny and fentanyl start with the same level.
There you go.
Yeah, I think, I was going to say, I think one of the, just kind of the other, just to stay, I'm going to come back to this one topic. That's the whole show for me is going to be
one topic.
Okay. But I think the other thing that I would, if I was starting out something I wish I knew now would be it's like this old joke. What do you want to be in 5 years? Right. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Having a plan, thinking about what do you want to accomplish and what are you going to take to do that? Because I think that as a comic, so often it is you are living show by show. And so you are just always up there and you're sort of like, oh, that last show sucked. I suck. Oh, that last show was really good. I'm great. and kind of think instead.
I haven't had that show yet.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
But you know what I'm saying? Instead really kind of thinking, it's like, oh, what kind of character do I want to build? Who's the audience that I want? And being willing to sort of work a plan for 5 years, because you know what? I think honestly most people are out of the business in 5 years.
But I would think that is a much higher plateau for people to be thinking about, because as we all know, when we started in your early 20s, late teens in some cases, what teenager is thinking about next year? let alone
the
right.
few that become superstars.
Yeah,
to be
Yeah,
honest.
well,
I
that's
mean,
true.
yeah.
If you've got that in you,
And the guys
but
that
most
told
don't.
me,
Yeah, but remember, this is the question of what is something you wish you knew.
No, I get it. I get it.
If
And the guys
Wait,
that
wait,
told
let's
me-
hear it. Cody got it. Good job. All right, good. That's enough of that shit.
And the guys that said, think about not the spaghetti dinner you're working tomorrow. What piece are you doing? Grow. And when it finally sank in that you're going for 20 minutes, you're going for 30 minutes. John Cantu ran the Holy City Zoo, my first paid gig. And he was like, first it's your 5, then it's your 10, then it's your 15. And he told me one time when I had 18 minutes maybe of material, don't get off that stage until 30 minutes is done. You need to prove to yourself that you can do it. And I got off at 28. And
Talk slower.
and he was mad that he goes, I gave you 30 minutes and you only did 28. What are you thinking about? And it mattered. It mattered. That 30-minute.
Yeah, and that's another thing that has been I've tried to beat into new comics as a producer. Now, I'm in a room full of comics. I'm a producer, so we might see things a little different. But stage time is so precious that you don't want to waste it or abuse it.
Yeah.
So like your friend John, who I knew, said, hey, you have 30. You, as an artist, you want to try to take advantage of that offer because you're not going to get it everywhere you go.
Right.
At the same time, there are some arrogant young comics that go, well, I know I only, I'm scheduled for 5 minutes, but I got 30 minutes, so I'm just going to go. And that's not how it's supposed to be. That's
I don't
for
think in San
professional.
Francisco when we started, there was a lot of that in our group.
Your
because
community?
It was, in that time, there were so many more experienced people that would have just shut you down. So many bookers that wouldn't have let you on. There was not a lot of running the light.
Yeah, you didn't
as
see
I
people doing
recall.
it. When you're going on stage at 12:30, 1 a.m. There are very few
Two
people.
people
go,
and a
I'm
dead
doing-
dog,
Yeah,
you
I'm
know.
doing 15 minutes now.
In the audience,
No,
right?
Yeah, that was a good 90 seconds. I think, I've done all my act.
Well,
It was just like the sex life, 90 seconds done.
Yeah, right.
Well, we used to, if you guys remember the original club, we actually had a big metal hook. And every now and then, when somebody would be abusing the stage, I'd stick the hook through the back curtain, and the audience would just burst into laughter, and the comic would turn around and go, "Oh, okay,"
that's what that was for.
They've already ignored the light.
Yeah.
Oh, I kept looking for the pool. I was like, where's the damn pool? He's got a shepherd's hook.
There you go, shepherd's hook. Good, not right on the noggin there.
I tried.
Some people
So-
words.
So keeping the flow going, we were talking about what we know now that we wish we knew then. But I think comedy's really changed. So I always feel blessed with my memories of what comedy was like in the 80s and 90s. But one of the reasons I sold the clubs and retired out of comedy in 2001 was I could see the writing on the wall. Things seemed to be changing. There was less emphasis on quality and clean. Preponderancy, I don't know what the right word would be, but
That's not it.
that's not it. There was a lot more.
Go with shepherd's
hook.
There was a lot more abuse of the audience trying to get shock humor.
Yeah.
And so let me ask you guys, and we can go around the table. You could just jump in. How would you say comedy has been changed from the 80s and 90s to, let's say, the last decade?
Well, I mean, I like to I always have a little joke about this idea about offending, right? It's sort of like, what's the difference between being funny or do you know the difference between being funny and being offensive? And the answer is obviously not. But I think a piece really was this idea of going from, anybody could get laughs, which is not true. But anybody could get laughs. But what I want to do is I want to make people angry or upset. And I think not really realizing, people showed up angry and upset.
Yeah, they're trying to get escapism.
Our job is to get away from that. And I think this idea of almost like authenticity and a belief that authenticity meant you were shocking people, you're upsetting people. So
Yeah, that's great. I didn't change when I think 87 or something like that. Clean was not particularly in, and it's just how I grew up. So I wasn't going to add words that I was unfamiliar with, and I mean,
Like
I knew the words. I knew the words.
I'd seen him in books before.
I'd seen them, but I never grew up around them. So, and I remember people that influenced me didn't use language for shock value, and I always thought, and I don't know if somebody pointed this out, but if the joke needed it to work, like a shock word in it, that then maybe it wasn't that strong of a joke. And also,
Right.
I got a ton of work really early on because guys knew that I didn't drop an F-bomb or whatever. So they got me work as an opening suffering act sometimes so that they could drop the bomb and have the shock value of the first thing. And I got more work as an opener just because I was different. And
Clean.
then I was like, yeah, clean.
Well, we should tell the audience, if you haven't heard Steve on some of the other podcasts, he is one of the funniest headliners out there, but also one of the cleanest. I mean, I've known you 30 years in comedy, and you don't need an F-bomb. You don't need shock humor.
Except on the golf course, people. Except I know the
Even
words.
right now, he looks very clean and well groomed.
I did shower.
Shirt is
before this
pressed.
event.
The jeans are lined up perfectly.
But the point is, to anybody listening that wants to get into the business, just like I try to explain in my online comedy courses, you need to realize there's more work for a clean comic than there is.
Yep.
Sure, we can name a couple super comedy stars that got the golden ticket that were dirty, but far more made a living being clean. You may not all be famous.
Right.
Although Jerry Seinfeld, Jay Leno, always clean.
I don't know who those guys are.
Oh, okay.
Are you able to?
Ray, what would you think?
Well, what I think, because I have a friend that started an open mic in Northern California, and he had me come out just to support him and check it out. And when we used to do open mics, and when we started out, we would sit there and we would say something, and somebody would like after your set, Cody would come up and go, "Hey, have you tried this?" And Steve would say, "Hey, here's a tag for that."
Right.
And I noticed these guys there. That first guy got up and he started talking about rape, and I go, "Oh, there's a cheery subject."
Yeah.
And I
Don't
thought
got
maybe
a lot of tags for that.
maybe I didn't hear it. Maybe it was grape knee high, and I just heard it wrong. And none of them were talking to each other, and it was there was no kind of joy in the room from the other comics.
Well, and that's the problem, and this has come up on Clubhouse when we've talked, is that some comics feel it's a competition as opposed to a community. In other words, instead of supporting your fellow comic, they feel like, oh, if he does well, I can't do well, which is totally not true. You want everyone to kill because the happier the audience is, the easier set's going to go.
And when we started, there were 800 clubs. I mean, there were 800. You just needed, what did I say, a car faster than your reputation. You could play. You could play. By the time you got back around, they forgot who. And then things kind of closed up. And now it's on. There are so many places to play online and stuff that it's a different animal. But I got to be true to the person that brung me.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of what you're talking about, with Scott and Ray, about people talking to each other, the community. I think a big aspect that's really different is that when we were starting out and doing comedy in the 80s and 90s and 2000s and today, but when you're really starting out, you're hanging out with people.
Yes.
Right. There's nothing. It's like, if you're hanging out at a club or at a bar from 8 until 1 in the morning, and you have to talk to each other.
Right.
I mean, maybe you only talk to one person, but now because you can be, you can be on your phone, and it really, I think, damages the social community aspect of comedy, and particularly in terms of holding people. Like if you're not in and you're a new guy showing up someplace, there's going to be a coldness that you're going to have to fight.
Oh, yeah, you're going to feel that separation.
I don't even think we had pagers back then.
No.
No. There was there was nothing to focus on but the alcohol and
It was a great community.
Other comics.
It really was. I remember missing an open mic for like 3 weeks because I literally had stage fright for a period of time when a show didn't go bad. And when I went back, people said, "Hey, where you been? Where you been?" They knew I was around, and hey, you had some funny style.
Today it's why are you here?
Yeah.
Things have changed.
I have given a suggestion at a showcase or whatever, and a buddy of mine said, "Don't talk to him. Don't give him that suggestion." And I'm like, "It's what I do, man. I think the word running is better than skipping, and here's why. Here's the logic." And my friend had to jump in because the guy wanted to get into a fight. And
what? You were trying to help him, and he took it personally?
He took it that who am I? Who am I to know
what's funny and what isn't? And let's see, 30 years in the business.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It wasn't like I was introduced like that. We didn't know any. When I moved from San Francisco, which was a very warm environment, like a chick under a hot light, a lovely
woman.
We're not talking about your women.
A little egg, a little egg in
The nest.
A nest of love.
Nest of love. And then you go to L.A., it was definitely a different vibe.
Yeah,
it was more competitive, and there was less. Even though there were more clubs down there, it was.
But even the clubs were segregated. I mean, if you played the Store, you may not be welcome at the Improv, and vice versa, or the Ice House. I mean, there's different things. So we've gone back to the past and done this comparison. Let's bring a little comedy into it. Cody, do you remember one of your first jokes or bits?
Go to Steve.
Okay.
I used to have a prop. I remember one of the first jokes I ever did is I'd have a sock that was cut off, and so you couldn't see it in my thing. And I'd go, "Oh, hey everybody," and I'd lift up my pant leg. I say, "I'm wearing my warning socks," and it's time to do laundry. I'm wearing my warning socks.
Oh.
I'm glad I didn't have a show tomorrow night because I'm down to my warning pants.
Okay, now I remember my joke.
Now you remember your joke.
Is it about warning socks?
It's about warning socks.
And I cut so many socks.
It's another clothing joke. Actually, one of the first jokes I ever had was actually because it was a story that my father had told me, which was about being in the Army, and he talked about this thing called Defendo. He talked about this joke called. He said, "Yeah, in Army they taught us this thing called Defendo." And he said, "That's what to do if somebody." And he had these things he would actually do, but basically, what to do if somebody pushes on your shoulder or somebody grabs your wrist.
Right, how to defend yourself.
Right, and so I always say, if I've never been in a fight where somebody pushed on my shoulder or grabbed my wrist. I mean, somebody's beating the crap out of me, and I'm going, grab my wrist.
I remember that bit.
That was one of the first bits I had. Yeah.
It worked because it was a little physical. You could do the animation of it. Yeah, grab my wrist. How about you, Ray? Any remembrance?
The very first joke I did at that open mic
Santa
Barbara joke was, I don't know, people asked me about doing this last night. They said, "Are you nervous?" I said, "No, I'm not nervous. I slept like a baby last night," which means I cried, puked, pissed, crapped, and kept it in the house till like 4 in the morning.
But I'm bummed. Oh, wait a minute. I have that on here.
Oh, I love that joke. Yeah.
Nice.
That's good. We'll see that all three of those work in their basic form.
I should bring back the warning socks?
Well, I'm not saying 30 years ago they worked. No, my point was that the art of comedy. Well, okay. I'm going to jump out and say it. The podcast, I'm enjoying doing so much. The interviews are great, but showcasing comedy, I was just editing a show with Mac and Jamie, and it's from like 1986. I was laughing all the way through while I'm editing. I mean, it was so funny. And my point is that funny is funny. And that even though some of the material might be quote unquote dated, if it was funny then, chances are it's funny now. And I think that that's a way to keep sharing your laughter with people. Now, you guys had those early jokes. You've come on. We were talking about how you're all pros at one time or another. Yeah. Steve still is. Ray's gone pro a different way. Cody was a pro and then failed. No, I mean went on and
fail is right. That's right.
No, I didn't mean that.
Fast.
I was trying to be funny.
Fail
Sorry,
hard.
sorry. I was trying to be funny.
No.
But that begs the question, and we'll go around the table. What do you think makes a comic a pro? Now, the definition in Webster's dictionary is getting paid, but that could be $5, $1, or $1 million. But I think as a producer, I have a different definition. I'd like to hear yours. Or we're starting with Ray. We're going to go backwards. Okay.
Counterclockwise.
So what makes somebody a professional?
Well, no, to you, when a comic, at what point does a comic become a pro?
When they can live off of it.
Okay, so when they're making a living, see, that's a great standard.
And I looked it up. And the top 1/2% of the profession, that starts where people can make a living doing comedy. So if you can live by yourself making comedy, you're in the 1/2% of your profession. Now you have to move up to that next 1/4% for people walk in and people can see you on the street. That's like Seinfeld.
Right. I call it the golden ticket.
That's how great we did because we could
no
live.
idea.
You're in the top 1/4, 1%.
I love that.
But that's a very definitive description, and would be a tough one for a lot of people that were just starting out to think that way. Steve, would you see it differently?
I used to always think, I always wanted to question to what do you attribute your long career in comedy, and I had this answer just patently set up of my ability to go long periods of time without food. I've always wanted to say that. Always, because I just thought it was true for various times in my life. But no, I was told early on by some booker that said, how many times have you done it? And I said, 50. And he goes, hey, when you get paid 100 times, you're a professional. And I counted, and I said, all of a sudden it was 100 times. I was really happy, and I was middling, I think, for Will Durst when I hit 100 gigs for money. And he goes, what are you so happy for? You know, your set went okay. I don't know if it's all that. I go, no, a guy told me 100 times. And he goes, no, you're not until you've done it 300 times. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
He was messing with you.
300 times. But I was working with another big name comic at 300 times. And he goes, no, you're not a professional comic until you've bombed 300 times for money. Because going to get the check after you've done badly for that is when you're leather skinned and you've been in it. You've been in the trenches. So
wow,
I don't know the percentage or whatever, but I figure there's guys that have made. If you've bought one round of drinks or a pizza for your friends that drove with you, you're a professional. I don't know what it takes, but but those are all make a living, because I would have.
Those are all interesting I
would have done this
answers
job
to the question.
With something else. Yeah. I would have had some other job to make money to augment my comedy career, and I did for a while. And then when I stopped that job, I had to get real serious about comedy.
Well, going to Ray's definition, I mean, there could be a multifaceted question in that, well, professional versus career.
Okay.
Right. So that's a whole nother question, really. But I was going for professional because the basis in Webster's is if you're getting paid to do something, you're considered a pro. And they don't stipulate how much money. Yeah, but there's a lot more reality to what you guys are saying.
Go ahead. We also have this thing where you have to kind of get over the poverty comic mindset.
Yes.
Which, you start doing it. You walk in with $25, you have a couple beers, you do a set, and you walk out with $37.50, and you're like, man, that's great. And that's
it's all a matter of perspective, really.
But that's the way most it's like, I'm ahead.
Right,
look at me, look at me go. Right. But to make a living out of it, you have to kind of sit there and go, oh, well, what's going to make it so I can pay my rent with that?
Right.
And
good.
I think that's a big difference.
Well,
it is.
I think so. First, I have a little joke, sort of, which is
nice.
I got a joke.
Jokes are good.
We're here for the joke. It's sort of like it really depends, right? We're talking about what does it take to be how many times you have to get paid? It's sort of like I was thinking, what does it take to make you a pro if you're doing sex once? You get paid once.
You get paid once.
There's film on you forever.
You don't get. You're always a pro.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
I had two professions.
That's a title I want on my resume.
Co-headlining with Connie Peters.
But I like that. I mean, I think the thing that I like thinking about is this idea of pro, and what's it, and to me, it's less about the money and it's less about getting paid. To me, a pro is the comic who that when you put them up on stage in whatever environment, they're going to do the job, right? They're going to deliver. They're going to deliver, and they're always they're going to kill a lot, but no matter what happens, they are going to put on a show, and they're going to put on a show that they're proud of and that you're proud of. Even if the audience doesn't like it, you're going to, what? These people got a good show. And I think that is to me, that's what it means to be a pro, to be that guy or that woman.
And I think they have to realize that you become a pro when you realize the pressure of what you're doing and what you have to do. So you have to have this audience on the edge of their seat enjoying what you're doing so the guys can stay there and sell the drinks and all that. It's the same kind of thing with professional speaking. The keynoter who gets paid a ton of money has to set the tone for the entire day, not tell people what to do, but get them excited to do those kind of things. And Friday, Saturday nights are like date night shows, and we're responsible for the sex lives of like 300 people in this smoke-filled room.
Yeah, you don't make my girlfriend laugh, I'm not getting a good evening. There's a little pressure.
It's in the Red Apple in Wenatchee, and we're getting people laid.
I was given some nice philosophy in I think it was Houston, Texas, and the club owner, it was my first time headlining, and he said, he paid me the money, and he goes, hey, you did pretty well this week. Here's an extra $100 or whatever. And he said, David Letterman just signed a contract for $15 million for 1 year, 1 year, $15 million. And he goes, here's what you got. And I think it was $1,500. And David Letterman, and he goes, there's a lot of room in between there for you to be really happy. And I remember him saying it in
That's
a way
actually good advice.
It was really, he goes, there's one David Letterman. He goes, but we need, we need people like you, and I'm going to give you more money when you come through again. And at that time, I'm pretty sure my rent was about $470. So I was looking ahead.
But, that was actually really cool of him to say that because it was bringing into perspective for a talented headliner who you'd already made, you were already doing the job.
Right.
But we all aspire to be the Lettermans or the Lenos. Nope. And the fact is there's only going to be a few of those. In fact, one of my questions I'd like to get answered, and this could be a perfect segue, is with that in mind, and I call it the golden ticket, there's only going to be, and I was very blessed to work with many of them, Robin Williams, Jay Leno, Dana Carvey, Jerry Seinfeld, you can go on and on. But the point is, I know many more guys.
That was the sound of names being dropped.
Yes. But like the three here in this room that are very funny, can entertain an audience, and you can go down the street and trust me, people don't know you, but that doesn't mean you weren't a professional, that you couldn't entertain, that you couldn't take the audience where they needed to be taken. And as a producer, I was happy to pay you crap money to
was cheap
to take the audience.
At least he gave us straws in our drinks, though.
Take the audience down that road. So with all that in mind, I mean, is anybody in the industry that you look up to that, maybe didn't get the golden ticket, but is a consummate pro? Cody?
I think this is somebody that I just actually, is a good friend of mine. I love Lori Kilmartin. I mean, she's great.
Great.
She's I've seen her, obviously she's been on, Conan, she's been on other network shows. You watch her work in person, and her, the power of her writing, the power of her persona, her ability to handle a crowd in all aspects of it, professionalism, funny, great material. She's somebody I just think is fantastic.
The whole package. Lori is I was blessed to work with a lot of talented comedians, but Lori would be near the top of the list. Steve, who
I think Jack Gallagher's he had a TV show. He's the funniest person I've ever seen. I saw him right before COVID, and he was still the funniest person I've ever seen. My wife was at the show, and I said, this is the funniest guy I've ever talked to, I've ever been on stage with. He's one of the nicest people. I think he's a massive talent that's he's done 8 one-man shows here in Sacramento. Sorry, we're not here in Sacramento in case the bomb goes off. But he's the kind of person that, him, and there's a guy, Kelly Monteith, that had a great show in Britain. So he wasn't as famous here, but he can't walk down the street. So I don't know what disqualifies whom. But those guys I saw, and I went, I want to do that. And my wife, I live in my hometown now, and I see people that I went to kindergarten with, and they go, hey, I heard you were a comic. How'd you do? And I'm like, I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it. And it's, never got famous or whatever. And my wife stepped in and goes, oh, no, he's not famous. He's just real successful.
So that was a great comment by your wife, because it went into perspective the difference between being somebody famous when there's maybe 10 or 20, if you really stretch, 30 people that we can name that are quote unquote famous comics. And yet we all 4 of us know hundreds of really funny people that made a career and a good living doing comedy. I'll jump in and say that for me, Larry Miller was one of those people, and he's kind of famous if you showed his picture to people, but I don't know if he'd be recognized going down the street, and if he's not a name act, they can't say Larry Miller, it's like Seinfeld, right? But one of the funniest guys on stage ever, and what was incredible about Larry is that he could do a one-liner, but he was at his best when he would do a 20-minute story bit, and you're laughing all the way through, and then just on the floor by the end. I mean, it was nonstop.
That sunlight was God's flashlight.
Yeah, that's one of his closers. So the stages of drinking.
Yes.
And Steve mentioned the skiing one. Oh, yeah, the little 5-year-old.
He also was the wit's end. Saw him do that on a notebook, and he was adding jokes as we were going. As he was going, and I was just like, it just keeps getting better and better and better.
He was a genius. Ray, who do you?
He's still alive, so he's still a genius.
And he was also the
Yes.
suck-up guy in Pretty Woman.
Yes,
yeah, which is a really
Yes.
funny scene in the movie.
Yep. Couple people come to mind. One is Milt Abel.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
well, Milt will like to hear that.
Yeah, he was fantastic, and he when he talked about being a cat, he became the cat.
Yes.
And he had the.
Do you want to buy the car today?
What's it going to take to put you in the car today?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, get off my leg. If you're willing
You're
to buy the
actually
car
doing
today,
his lines.
if you're willing to buy the car today,
Yeah.
I'll give you a really good deal. Every other day of the year, I'm going to screw you, but today you get to screw me. Come on.
Well, what I loved about Milt, and it's sad because you can't see it in a podcast, was he had like the rubber face.
Yeah.
And that he could do whatever and express it on stage. So the audience was getting even more than you could get on a podcast. They were getting the visual. Like I remember when he would do the car sales bit, and he goes, the eyes behind the painting watching you, you know. Anyway, so we've touched on a few people that we've really enjoyed and admired in the business that aren't golden ticket winners, aren't necessarily household names, but made terrific, financially successful careers out of comedy. And everybody in this room has made a living at a comedy one time or another. But let's kind of wind this down. Now, we were talking earlier before we turned on the recorder about how sports athletes can strain a muscle or with age, might be a great baseball player, and by 28 they're too old. I mean, it's just some of these sports are so difficult on age wise, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons I love playing golf. My wife and I can play golf until we drop, right? She used to be really good at volleyball, and she had the one injury, boom, she can't play anymore. So that's just an analogy. But in comedy, I was wondering if the three of you had any ideas of what might have changed or affected you. How did you change as a person doing comedy over a period of time? They all look very pondering. I might have thrown too much at them.
All right, I'll let Ray go.
Nice. Thank you. Wow.
Cody's really good at throwing that.
He is. Yeah. He threw to me.
This hotel room isn't that big, but Cody's got a bus to throw people in. But I left right around the turn of the century.
Nice.
And I went into sales and sales management, and what I did very well in that is I taught my people the principles of stand-up in business, not the good part where you get to hang out with drunk people and tell jokes, but having to shut up like 5 bikers playing pool for $500 a game, and you have to get them to shut up in 5 minutes because your show starts in 5 minutes.
Right, taking control of a room.
The people skills of comedy, I think, are the biggest things that I took out of it. And I like to think of it, you take comedy, well, you can speak humorously in front of businesses now and they give you more money. I call that the senior circuit, Scott.
Well, I think that's so true, and a lot of people can learn from that it's more than just telling jokes or drinking at the bar. Part of my job as the MC of all those shows was to get control of the room, get the focus of the audience, which are key things. Cody, what are your thoughts on this?
So what was the question again, Scott?
What do you think?
40-minute question, Cody.
What do you think over the years as we've done comedy are some of the things that we may have are getting more challenged with now? I'll give you a great example. If I was to go on stage now to try to get the attention from everybody's phone or all the people that they're offended if you say anything, the sky's blue. What?
You're blue shaming, Scott.
Yes. So I mean, those are a couple examples of how I've aged out.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways, I think it comes. I think comedy comes full circle, and I guess this is maybe this is just for me, right? Which is when I was a kid. There'd be something funny that I saw. I'd see something funny on TV. I'd read something funny, and I would want to share that with my friends. And I got good at doing that, and I started writing my own jokes, and I got to go up on stage and entertain strangers. And it's still great and it's still wonderful to make strangers laugh. The other thing, though, is that it starts to come full circle, which is I see something funny. Whether it's something funny that I turn into my own joke or I see a funny person do something funny, and I take that and I go, this is funny, and I want to share it with somebody. And I share it with the people at work. I share it with my family. And so it's that kind of idea of recognizing that, at least for me, I got into comedy because I love making people laugh, one, but I also love taking something that I think is funny and sharing it with somebody else. And so I do that constantly every day with people around me.
So not something that's actually aged out. What you're saying is something that you learned doing stand-up comedy and using it as a career that adapted you so that as you move forward and get older, you have that ability to see things and share things in a funnier aspect that maybe you could have before.
You're bringing, I think you're just like you used to bring stuff up on stage to strangers, you're just bringing things, you're adding to whatever you're doing. If you can take something you saw and say, hey, I saw this thing, let me tell you about
at work, they're going, that Cody guy, if you get him in a restroom, he is hilarious.
That's right.
He puts joy on top of joy right there at the urinal. I almost spit up the cake.
Thank goodness I work from home.
Steve, any thoughts on this convoluted question?
My filter's a little bit better, I think. I know.
Oh, that's a good point.
I think that I'm better at seeing what will work out of my viewpoint. Which I didn't. I was kind of shotgun for many, many years when I started out, and I'd narrow it down by what they laughed at as opposed to what I thought was funny. So I maybe transitioned into this is funny from a perspective that I hold better. It's still kind of shotgunny because I'm kind of the boy next door that's not the creepy kind with kids underneath the floorboards, but I'm just like the average guy, and that's kind of the perspective that I talk about, and that's kind of how I think. I just think better about it now, I think. I hope.
So actually, my question was absolutely horrible. It's not what we've lost with age. It's actually what we've gained with age through the experience we've had in this art
I've lost the lack of having a filter.
I've gained 27 pounds.
I think the other thing that changes, and as a comic, just to kind of pull back to this thing about what changes, is you have to be, if you want to be up on stage entertaining people who are 20, 25, 30, you've got to let go of a little bit of things that you used to think that were funny to people 25 years ago. People change, and if you're still hanging on, you're upset because you can't talk about subject X that you used to be able to talk about because people get upset about it.
Yeah. I got a great Reagan joke.
My VCR says I'm funny.
To quote Steve, the Yugo Bends, right? Wait, they used to have these things.
Wow.
You have to, if you're gonna, know your audience. If you want, if you want to entertain bitty, if you want to entertain, bitter 55-year-olds like some of us are, you know what? You can do those jokes if you want to entertain, angry.
I think
25-year-olds.
The woke kids.
Yeah, I know, but I think you brought that around perfectly for the end of this podcast, because what it comes down to is all of us had that talent of relating to the audience back in the 80s or 90s, and some of us, Steve Bruner, can continue to relate to the audience and make a living at it and have a career at it today. But it is not easy, because even though our comedy may be consistent, the audience keeps changing.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was supposed to be profound.
I don't know.
Every year, the high school seniors get younger and younger.
All right. Well, we're gonna wind this up. I didn't plan this. I know you guys don't have anything planned, but for the audience or for future comics, any words of wisdom as we go around the table? And I'm going to say Cody, and he's going to throw it to.
No. Words of wisdom. Get good. Work on your craft. Become a pro. Somebody people can depend on.
What you talked about earlier, the
Yeah.
define of a pro, be somebody a producer like I could depend on.
Yeah.
Do your job. How about you, Steve?
I'm planning to turn pro next year. And write as much as you can. Just write. Just get your ideas out, because they're not going to do any good if you don't.
If you don't try them, yeah.
If you don't try them, try all your ideas.
Well, the first part's get them on paper.
Get them on paper. Get them on.
But
your
then get them on the
computer, your
stage.
phone, get them on the stage, and honor your craft.
There you go,
Good idea.
Ray.
I think that the key thing that I learned, because when I left and I kind of came back into speaking, I met a lot of the people that I knew during stand-up with Facebook and things like that. The people that made it might not have been the best comics, but they just never gave up.
They were persistent.
Persistence.
But persistency pays off if you're writing and performing, that even if at a certain level you suck, you are going to improve with time.
So I suck less, by the way. I suck far less.
Take all these 3 pieces of advice, put it together, you win.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for our first Comedy Round Table. Oh, it's incredible. I want to thank my friends Cody Cotulla for joining us. Say goodbye, Cody.
Goodbye, Scott.
And I want to say thank you to Steve Bruner for joining us.
I will also say goodbye.
And Ray Engan.
Thank you, Scott.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next week for another tremendous podcast from Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC. For information on the show, merchandise, and our sponsors, or to send comments to Scott, visit our website at www.standupyourhostandmc.com. Look for more episodes soon and enjoy the world of stand-up comedy. Visit a comedy showroom near you.